My name is Ivy Mercer, and tonight was supposed to be about my sister. That's what everyone kept saying anyway, as if rehearsing a line they'd been practicing for years. The ballroom at the Fairmont glowed like success smelled of champagne, and the Mercer family, my family, floated through the crowd like they owned the air. I stood near the edge of the stage, my fingers resting on the back of a velvet chair, listening to a man with too much gel talk about Serena's brilliance. Harvard. Law. The golden daughter, he called her, and the audience laughed like it was scripture. Then he found me with his smile, the kind that pretends to be warm while sharpening its teeth. And of course, he said, we can't forget Ivy, the sweet one, the creative spirit. A pause. A chuckle. Not everyone was meant to chase the stars. Some are meant to make life beautiful from the ground. Polite applause. A few sympathetic looks. My jaw held steady, but my stomach twisted. I'd been hearing versions of that speech my whole life, pretty words dipped in pity. That's when the event coordinator stepped toward me, holding a sealed envelope gold crest pressed into cream paper. "This was left for you," he whispered, confusion softening his expression. "From Hale and Whitmore Trust." Arthur Hale, my grandfather's attorney. My fingers hesitated only once before I took it. The weight of the paper felt wrong for a party like this, too serious, too deliberate. The kind of envelope you don't receive unless something is about to change. Up on stage, Serena lifted her glass, confident, flawless, already living inside her victory. I held the envelope against my palm and felt heat rise behind my ribs. For once I wasn't just watching the moment. I could feel the moment watching me back. Applause rippled again as Serena finished her speech, and someone dimmed the lights, just enough to make the chandeliers look like constellations built for her alone. I tucked the envelope into my clutch and stepped off the riser before anyone could decide I should smile for the family photo. My mother intercepted me anyway, her perfume hitting first sharp and expensive. "Ivy," she murmured, fingers curling around my elbow as if my arm were a misbehaving ribbon. Try not to look so startled. Cameras catch everything. "I'm fine," I said. "You look like someone handed you a bill you can't pay." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It rarely did when she looked at me. "Remember, sweetheart, tonight is Serena's moment. Don't complicate it." I could have shown her the envelope, then let the seal speak for itself. Instead, I inhaled, nodded, and slipped free. I'd learned long ago that power doesn't always come from confronting. Sometimes it comes from choosing when not to. At the edge of the ballroom, my father and Serena's fiancé, Oliver, stood with two partners from her firm, laughing in the relaxed way people laugh when they believe the future belongs to them by default. My father saw me and beckoned. "There you are. Serena told us you'll be signing the waiver tonight." "Good girl. It'll streamline everything." Waiver. Right. The document that would tidy me out of the trust, erase any legal friction. Let the family machine run smoother without my name cluttering the ledger. "I haven't signed anything," I replied calmly. Oliver blinked. My father's smile thinned. "Ivy, don't be dramatic. It's a formality. We all know you don't want that burden." Burden, such a neat word for erasure. Serena approached, champagne in hand, eyes bright with triumph. "If you need help understanding it, I can walk you through the basics. Legal language can be tricky." She touched my arm like a nurse humoring a patient. Something in my chest cooled. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was clarity, sharp and final, like a blade resting on glass. "I'll review it," I said softly after I read the letter Grandpa left for me. 4 faces stilled at once. Not dramatically, just a small collapse of certainty, the kind that comes before fear realizes it's been invited. "I need 48 hours, I added. "Then you'll have my answer." Serena tried to laugh, but it faltered. "Ivy, you're overthinking." "No," I interjected. "I'm finally thinking." I turned away before they could recover their poise. Outside, cold Boston air knifed across my skin, clean and honest, in a way nothing inside that ballroom had been. My phone buzzed Miles. "You out?" he asked when I answered. "Yeah." "You sound different." I looked down at my clutch at the envelope pressed against my palm like a pulse. "I am." Tomorrow the truth would begin to breathe. I didn't sleep. Not because I was upset, there was a strange calm in my chest, like the air right before snow falls. Real change rarely arrives with a scream. Sometimes it comes as quietly as an envelope left on a banquet table. At 7 a.m., I walked into the little cafe near the Charles River, where Miles and I always met before school started. He already had 2 coffees on the table, and his laptop, open hair pushed back like he'd been up hunting truth instead of sleeping. "You look like someone handed you a secret," he said. "Someone did." I slid the envelope across the table and watched his brows lift as he traced the seal. "Hale and Whitmore," he murmured. "That's your grandfather's firm, but your family acts like they barely remember he existed." "They remember," I said quietly. "They just pretend not to." I took a breath and opened the envelope. Inside were two things: a short handwritten note and a printed page with trust letterhead. The handwriting hit me first, Arthur's neat slanted strokes. "Ivy impact isn't measured by applause. Follow the numbers. Hawthorne Trust supplemental directive. 2 days, AH." Miles whistled under his breath. "Your grandfather didn't send you a message," he said. "He set a timer." The printed note listed access instructions for internal financial summaries and a reference to something called Artemis Allocation Schedule. I recognized the name instantly. Artemis Foundation, the nonprofit that funded classroom programs across the state. The same foundation that quietly paid for my art supplies when the district budget cut us dry. "He funded you," Miles said, reading my expression. "And he didn't want them to know." The cafe noise faded. Kids ordering hot chocolate. A business student talking too loudly about internships. Everything felt distant. I wasn't imagining the years of being the quiet one, the gentle one, the harmless one. I had simply been measured with a ruler my parents refused to use. "What do you want to do?" Miles asked. I tightened my grip on the letter. "Find the numbers, and see what they say about all of us." He nodded once the way he does before following me into something messy. Then we start with Form 990's public filings and trust disclosures. Paper trails talk. I almost laughed. My parents spent years mocking me for choosing art over law or finance, and yet here I was, coffee-cooling paint still under my nails, about to unravel my family's narrative with tax documents and a dead man's handwriting. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes quiet means loaded. And 48 hours had already begun ticking. Libraries in the morning smell like ambition and dust, and MIT's law library had more of both than anywhere I'd ever been. Miles flashed his alumni card at the desk. The scanner beeped, and the soft murmur of pages settling welcomed us inside. I carried Arthur's letter in my coat pocket close enough to feel like he was walking beside me, steady and patient. We claimed a study table under a tall window. The river outside shimmered under weak winter light. Students hurried by, bundled in coats, chasing deadlines that felt urgent but small. I envied them a little. Innocence is just ignorance dressed politely. Miles pulled up trust law references, IRS charity codes, and public filings. I opened the digital folder. Arthur's instructions unlocked. Rows of transfers appeared. Artemis Foundation disbursements, Hawthorne Trust allocations. And something else, a line item labeled Education Enrichment, Mercer Family. My chest tightened. Education enrichment. It sounded gentle. It sounded fair. It was neither. I clicked a linked memo. The phrasing was clinical, unemotional. Funds earmarked for scholastic development priorities within primary beneficiary lineage. In plain English, money meant to support both siblings' growth. But the attached ledger told a different story. Nearly every dollar flowed toward Serena Prep School add-ons, LSAT coaching, networking retreats in Aspen labeled leadership intensives. Meanwhile, I remembered my mother handing me a $30 Michaels gift card on my birthday and telling me to make the most of it. A hollow warmth spread in my stomach. Not shock. Recognition. I had always known favoritism lived in our house. I just never saw its receipts. Miles leaned over my screen. "That's not just unfair," he murmured. "It's misrepresentation. Trustees rely on accurate allocation reporting." I swallowed. "They didn't break the law." "No," he agreed. "But they broke trust. And that matters in trusts." He gestured at the highlighted text. Arthur was building a case. He knew. I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle heavy but clarifying. My grandfather hadn't believed I was weak. He believed I was underestimated. A message notification popped up on my phone, my mother. "Dinner tonight. Family only. We need alignment." Alignment. The same word my father used when adjusting spreadsheets and scolding me for coloring outside expectations. I texted back one word, yes. Miles studied me. "You ready for that?" I folded the memo carefully like a fragile photograph. I've spent years being spoken over, smiled at, boxed in. Tonight, I don't plan to raise my voice. I slid the paper into my notebook spine, straightening. But I will be heard. Outside, snow began drifting past the window, quiet, persistent, impossible to ignore. Exactly how truth falls when the season changes. Mercer dinners were never gentle. Even with crystal and roast salmon, something sharp always lingered, like expectation had teeth. That night was no different. My mother sat at the head control, not warmth. Serena to her right, posture perfect. I chose the seat opposite Serena, invisible to those assuming I made no strategic choices. Ivy, my mother began soft as velvet over steel. We've had a long day preparing next steps after last night's. Surprise, Serena smiled. Grandpa leaving you a note was sweet, but trusts require direction. It's best to sign the waiver soon. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Confusion happens when people pretend fairness existed, I said, sliding a ledger across the table. Evidence, not emotion. I've reviewed Arthur's directive, I continued. Hawthorne Trust requires evaluation based on measurable community impact. You're twisting things you barely understand, Serena snapped. I understand enough. Grandpa was deliberate. He tracked outcomes. The review will proceed, and I'll attend with documentation. Silence fell heavy as snowfall. This isn't who you are, my father murmured. It's who I learned to be, I said. For the first time, no one corrected me. The review took place in a modest back bay trust office, neutral carpet, muted walls, copier humming. Ms. Harrington, trustee, led the table. Serena and my parents flanked her. Miles waited outside, texting breathe reminders. Thank you for attending. As per the directive, we're evaluating preliminary beneficiary positioning, Ms. Harrington said. Serena smiled. Arthur adored Ivy, but the logical beneficiary, it's not affection we're evaluating. Ms. Harrington interrupted. It's impact. I slid my folder forward. Attendance logs, letters from Title I, principals, photos of students creating art data on improvements, proof of effort, not spotlight. Serena's folder gleamed with awards and press surface excellence. Miles's research followed sponsorships disguised as charitable partnerships benefiting Serena's firm. Ethical gray, not illegal. But trust law measures intent. I see, Ms. Harrington murmured. My father leaned forward. Financial support was offered. She chose a different path. I didn't choose a different path, I said calmly. I walked the one I could afford. Ms. Harrington declared I was the primary beneficiary under a 2-year conditional term. Serena could requalify through verified pro bono work. Serena inhaled sharply. My mother whispered. My father looked wounded anew. Peace isn't loud. It sits in your bones. Outside Miles's text arrived. Told you. Quiet doesn't mean small. For once at a table where I was never meant to win, I didn't feel small. I didn't celebrate. There was no cinematic gasp, no triumphant music swelling in my head. My parents left the room first, moving quickly, stiffly, as if embarrassment were something physical clinging to their clothes. Serena stayed seated, staring at the table jaw tight enough to crack enamel. For a second I almost reached for her hand, old instinct sisterhood, but didn't. Sometimes mercy isn't rushing to comfort someone who never learned to offer it back. You think this makes you better? She asked. No, I said calmly. It makes things fair. She laughed humorlessly. Fair doesn't exist in our family. Maybe it starts now. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked it away and left heels, sharp spine, proud grief disguised as arrogance. She didn't slam the door. That almost hurt more. Miles met me in the lobby with tea. You did it, he said quietly. No, Arthur did. I just followed his path. You could have crushed them harder. I could have, I admitted. But then I'd become what they raised, not who I chose to be. Outside Boston, winter hung in the air, soft and metallic, promising change. I carried the trust paperwork like direction, not weight. They're going to fight you, Miles said. Probably. You ready? I'm not interested in fighting, I said. I'm interested in building. We walked together, leaving behind a building where an old legacy cracked. Not victory, not vengeance. A beginning. The first morning with the trust binder, sunlight spilled gently through my apartment window. I brewed tea, opened a blank notebook, and breathed normally for the first time in years. I didn't move back home. I rented a studio near the river, hung student paintings, filled jars with paintbrushes instead of apologies. Artemis approved expansion. 3 more schools, 2 counselors, and an art room quietly named for Arthur. No plaque, no spotlight. Family said little. Serena emailed once short, stiff, starting pro bono hours. I didn't expect gratitude. Growth isn't always loud. Revenge wasn't closure. It was clarity. I didn't win against them. I won away from them. Justice. I realized isn't a slammed door. It's a door opened ahead. My story ends with space to breathe and a future I get to paint stroke by patient stroke in the quiet I earned.